We're all a little obsessed with rankings, aren't we? Best movies, best cities, even the best coffee shops. But when we start talking about universities, the stakes get so much higher. I mean, these lists can shape entire careers, steer billions in funding, and define national prestige. So that brings us to a really huge question. Is it just the biggest one, the one that publishes the most papers? Or is there a smarter, maybe a fairer way to measure what excellence actually looks like? Okay, let's dive into this quest for a better scorecard, and we're going to look at a fascinating case study coming out of Türkiye. So back in 2017, Turkey's Council of Higher Education, or YÖK, kicked off this really ambitious program. The whole idea was to identify and support a special group of elite research universities, the flagships of the country's higher ed system. It was a great concept, but actually measuring their performance year after year, well, that turned out to be a real challenge. And that leads us right to the core problem that a recent academic paper tried to solve. See, the official ranking system was just too volatile. The rules of the game were changing so fast that it was practically impossible to track any real long-term progress. Okay, take a look at this. This was the scorecard back in 2019, and it's broken down into three main buckets. You've got research quality at 40%, research capacity at 25%, and then this huge slice interaction and collaboration making up a hefty 35%. This was the target. This was what everyone was aiming for. Now let's fast forward just 2 years to 2021. The weights have shifted, and not just a little bit, I mean dramatically. Look over on the left at research capacity. It leaped from 25% all the way up to 40%. And at the same time, that big interaction and collaboration category got slashed from 35% down to just 20%. Seeing them side by side like this really drives the point home. Imagine you're running a university, trying to build a long-term strategy. How are you supposed to plan for the future when the very definition of success changes this much, this quickly? It creates a system that rewards short-term fixes, not sustained excellence. But, the volatility wasn't even the only problem. The other major issue was how things were being counted. Most of the metrics were just simple totals. Total publications, total funding, total patents. And this, by its very nature, gives a huge advantage to massive universities. A smaller, super efficient institution might be doing way more impactful work per person, but their achievements could get completely lost in the noise because of this size bias. So, how do you fix a system like that? Well, the study we're digging into here proposes a totally different model, one designed from the ground up to be more stable, fair, and objective. It's really all about creating a level playing field. And the solution really comes down to two brilliant, pretty common sense ideas. First, instead of looking at that chaotic year-to-year data, the model uses 5-year rolling averages. This just smooths out all the random bumps and shows you the real long-term trend. And second, it shifts the focus away from raw totals to much smarter metrics that measure efficiency. And here's what that looks like in the real world. Instead of just counting the total number of publications, the new model looks at publications per faculty member. Instead of total PhD graduates, it's PhD students per faculty member. And it moves from just counting patent applications to counting finalized, successful patents. It's a simple change, but it's so powerful. The focus becomes all about impact and efficiency, not just sheer size. Okay, so creating fairer metrics is one thing, that's half the battle, but how do you decide which of the 36 different indicators is the most important? I mean, the old system had people assigning those weights, and we saw how much those could change. This new model, though, uses some really powerful analytical tools to let the data itself make the decision. The first tool has a cool name, the Entropy Method. Now, that sounds complicated, I know, but think of it this way. Imagine you're judging a talent show. If every single person who gets on stage is a great singer, singing ability isn't a very useful way to tell them apart, right? But what if only a few of them can juggle chainsaws? Well, that becomes a much more important high-weight factor. The entropy method does the same thing with university data, automatically giving more weight to the metrics that actually show the biggest differences in performance. It just takes the human guesswork right out of it. So once all those metrics are weighted properly, the second tool kicks in, Grey Relational Analysis. What this method does is it starts by creating a data profile of a hypothetical perfect university, one that gets the absolute top score on every single indicator. Then it just measures how similar each real university's profile is to that ideal one. The closer you are to perfect across the board, the higher your rank. It's a truly holistic way to measure excellence. So we've got a more stable, more objective, and fairer system.
But why does an academic exercise like this even matter in the real world? Well, it turns out the implications are huge for students, for faculty, and for national policy.
As the author of the study Tuna Batuhan says, a system like this isn't just about shuffling names on a list. It provides clear, reliable data that's needed to make better decisions. Everything from how universities plan their own futures to how governments decide where to put critical funding.
So when you put it all together, the benefits are just crystal clear. You get stable rankings you can actually rely on. You create fair comparisons where those smaller, really excellent schools can finally get the recognition they deserve. Universities get a clear roadmap for what to focus on, and policymakers can invest resources where they'll have the most impact. It's really about strengthening the entire higher education system from the ground up.
So I think the crucial takeaway from all of this is that the quest for the best university is less about who gets that #1 spot and much more about building a system that truly understands and encourages every single dimension of academic excellence. The how matters just as much as the who. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. While a fair and stable ranking system is absolutely essential, what about those intangible things? The qualities that can't be measured by any metric? What are the things that truly define a great and impactful university? That's definitely something worth thinking about.